The laughter echoed through the grand hall as champagne glasses clinked in celebration. Everyone was smiling, everyone was happy. Everyone except the woman sitting at the corner table, pen trembling in her hand as she signed away 7 years of her life. They thought she had nothing. They thought she was nobody. They mocked her worn shoes and her quiet demeanor. Derek's mother called her the charity case, right to her face, and his sisters laughed so hard they nearly spilled their wine. But what they didn't know, what none of them could have possibly known, was that the woman they were humiliating owned the very company that kept their lifestyle afloat. The same woman they called worthless had just pulled a $100 million investment that would bring their world crashing down. This is the story of Adiz, a woman who chose silence over confrontation, dignity over drama, and freedom over a family that never deserved her. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away and let karma do the rest. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Tonight, we're going to answer 3 questions that will keep you on the edge of your seat. First, how did a billionaire CEO end up married to a man who treated her like she was worthless? Second, what happened when Derek's family discovered who Adiz really was? And third, did Derek ever realize what he'd lost, or was it already too late? This isn't just a story about divorce. It's about respect, self-worth, and the moment when a woman decides she's had enough. It's about family dynamics, hidden identities, and the price people pay when they judge others by appearances. The players in this drama are simple. Adiz, a self-made billionaire who built her empire from nothing. Derek, her husband of 7 years who grew comfortable taking her for granted. And Derek's family, a collection of entitled relatives who measured worth in designer labels and forgot that true value runs much deeper. The setting: a Thanksgiving celebration that would become the most expensive dinner of their lives. To understand how everything fell apart, you need to understand how it all began. Adiz Okonkwo wasn't born into wealth. She grew up in a modest home in Enugu, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a nurse. Her parents taught her 2 things: the value of hard work and the importance of staying humble no matter how high you climbed. Her father, Professor Okonkwo, taught mathematics at the local secondary school. He was a brilliant man who could have pursued wealth in Lagos or even abroad, but he chose to stay in Enugu because he believed education should reach everyone, not just the privileged. Every evening, he would sit young Adiz down and teach her not just mathematics, but life principles. "Adiz," he would say, "money comes and goes. But character is permanent. Build yourself on a foundation that cannot be shaken by circumstances." Her mother, Nurse Okonkwo, worked double shifts at the General Hospital. She was known for treating every patient with the same care, whether they could pay or not. Adiz would sometimes accompany her mother to the hospital during school holidays, watching as she tended to wealthy businessmen and poor farmers with equal dedication. "See that man?" Her mother once pointed to a wealthy patient who had been rude to the staff. "He thinks his money makes him important. But when he's lying in that bed, sick and afraid, his money means nothing. What matters is whether he's built relationships with people who genuinely care about him." These lessons shaped Adiz profoundly. While other children played, young Adiz read. She devoured books on business, economics, and entrepreneurship. She studied the stories of successful Africans who had built empires from nothing: Aliko Dangote, Folorunsho Alakija, Strive Masiyiwa. She didn't just admire their wealth. She studied their strategies, their resilience, their ability to see opportunities where others saw obstacles. By 16, she had started her first small business, selling handmade jewelry at local markets. But this wasn't just a hobby. Adiz approached it like a real enterprise. She kept detailed records of expenses and profits. She studied customer preferences. She reinvested every naira she earned back into the business. Her father noticed her dedication. "You're serious about this," he observed one evening as she worked on her accounts. "Yes, Papa," Adiz replied. "I want to build something big. Something that can help people." "Why?" he asked. "What drives you?" Adiz looked up from her notebook. "Because I've watched you and Mama work so hard your entire lives, and you still struggle. I want to create a different reality, not just for myself, but for others. I want to prove that where you start doesn't determine where you finish." Her father smiled, pride evident in his eyes. "Just remember, my daughter, success without character is just noise. Build both." By the time Adiz was 22, she had transformed that small jewelry business into something much larger. She had identified a gap in the local manufacturing sector. Quality home goods were mostly imported, expensive, and inaccessible to average Nigerians. She began manufacturing affordable, high-quality household items using local materials and labor. Her business model was simple but revolutionary. Create products that ordinary Nigerians could afford, while maintaining quality standards that competed with imported goods. Employ local workers and pay them fair wages. Reinvest profits into expansion rather than personal luxury. It worked. Within 3 years, her company had expanded to multiple states. Within 5 years, she was exporting to other West African countries. By the time she was 30, Adiz Okonkwo was the CEO of Okonkwo Industries, a multinational corporation worth billions. But here's the thing about Adiz that confused everyone who met her. Despite her wealth, she lived simply. She still drove the Toyota Camry her father had given her when she graduated from university. It was old, yes, but it was reliable and it reminded her of where she came from. She wore clothes that were comfortable, not flashy. She believed that fashion was personal expression, not a competition. She preferred a well-made simple dress to an overpriced designer label that screamed for attention. She lived in a nice house, but nothing ostentatious. No mansion, no fleet of luxury cars, no Instagram-worthy displays of wealth. True wealth, she would often say to her employees, is measured by what you can give, not what you can show. I'd rather invest in scholarships for 100 students than buy a car that costs 100 million naira just to prove I can afford it. This philosophy made her almost invisible in social circles where everyone competed to outshine each other. The Lagos elite couldn't quite figure her out. She had the money to join their ranks, but she showed no interest in their games of status and display. "She's eccentric," they would whisper at charity events. "Old money trying to hide," others speculated, not knowing that Adiz had built every naira herself. And that's exactly how she liked it. Adiz had learned early that people's true colors emerged when they thought you had nothing. She wanted to be valued for who she was, not what she had. This brings us to Derek Nwosu. Derek was different when they first met. Or at least, he seemed different. They met at a charity fundraiser for children's education. Adiz was the anonymous donor funding an entire wing of a new school building. She had donated 50 million naira but insisted on remaining unnamed. She didn't need recognition, she needed results. Derek was there representing his family's construction business, hoping to make connections and secure contracts. Nwosu Construction had been a respected company once, but years of mismanagement and poor decisions had left it struggling. Derek approached Adiz at the refreshment table. She was standing alone, watching the crowd with quiet amusement as people competed for attention and connections. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," Derek said with a friendly smile. Adiz turned to him, surprised. Most people at these events didn't notice the quiet woman in the corner. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who feels the same way," Derek replied. "I'm Derek Nwosu." "Adiz Okonkwo," she said, shaking his hand. They talked for 2 hours. Derek asked her about her thoughts on education reform, her views on entrepreneurship, her dreams for the future. He seemed genuinely interested in her ideas, not just making small talk. He didn't ask what she did for a living. He didn't inquire about her family's wealth or connections. He just talked to her. Like she was a person worth knowing, regardless of her status or resources. For someone like Adiz, who had been pursued by countless men interested only in her wealth once they discovered it, Derek felt like fresh air. Over the next 6 months, they dated. Derek was attentive and thoughtful. He brought her favorite books, not expensive jewelry. He planned quiet dinners where they could talk, not flashy outings designed to impress. He seemed to value simplicity as much as she did. Adiz's best friend Chioma had her doubts. "Have you told him about Okonkwo Industries?" Chioma asked one evening over dinner. "Not exactly," Adiz admitted. "I told him I do consulting work and have some investments." "That's not the same as telling him you're a billionaire CEO," Chioma pointed out. "I know," Adiz said. "But I want to be sure he loves me for me, not for what I have. Every other man who found out about my money changed. They either became intimidated or they became entitled. I want something real, Chioma. Something built on who we are, not what we have." Chioma reached across the table and took her friend's hand. "I understand. Just be careful. Sometimes people reveal their true nature when the stakes get higher." But Adiz was in love. And when you're in love, you sometimes miss the warning signs that are right in front of you. Derek proposed after a year of dating. It was simple and sweet, a quiet evening at a park they both loved, just the two of them. No grand gestures, no social media announcements. Just a heartfelt question and a sincere yes. They married in a simple ceremony, Adiz's choice. She wanted something intimate and meaningful, with close friends and family. About 50 guests, a beautiful garden venue, and vows they wrote themselves. Derek agreed to everything, though his family complained loudly about the lack of extravagance. "Why are we having such a small wedding?" Derek's mother, Patience, demanded. "What will people think? That we can't afford better." "We're having the wedding we want, Mama," Derek said. "It's our day, not a performance for society." But Patience wasn't satisfied. She made her displeasure known throughout the ceremony, making comments about the simple decorations and the modest guest list. That should have been the first red flag. But Adiz was determined to see the best in everyone. She attributed Patience's behavior to cultural differences in values, not recognizing it for what it truly was, the beginning of a pattern. For the first 2 years of marriage, things were good. Derek worked at his family's construction company, trying to help turn the business around. Adiz continued running her empire, though she still hadn't explicitly told Derek the full extent of her wealth. He knew she was comfortable. He knew she had investments that generated good income. But he didn't know she was a billionaire. He didn't know she was one of the most successful businesswomen in West Africa. He didn't know that the consulting work she mentioned involved running a company with thousands of employees across multiple countries. And Adiz was careful to keep it that way. She wanted to be sure that Derek loved her for who she was at her core, not for what she could provide. She worked from home most days, conducting video conferences when Derek was at work. She maintained a separate office in town, but never took Derek there. She kept her business life and personal life in separate compartments. Looking back, Adiz would realize that this secrecy, while born from good intentions, created problems of its own. Derek developed an incomplete picture of who she was. And when you don't know someone fully, you fill in the gaps with assumptions, and Derek's assumptions were dangerously wrong. He assumed she was comfortable but not wealthy. He assumed she was successful but not exceptional. He assumed she was competent but not powerful. These assumptions would prove catastrophic. The turning point came in year 3 of their marriage. Derek's family business started hemorrhaging money at an alarming rate. Poor management decisions, failed projects, and mounting debts were pushing Wosu Construction toward bankruptcy. Derek became consumed with stress. The business that had been in his family for 3 generations was failing on his watch, and the pressure was enormous. He started coming home late, exhausted and frustrated. The easy conversations they used to have became difficult. The warmth between them cooled. And then the criticism started. "Adiz, why don't you dress better?" Derek asked one evening as they prepared for a family gathering. "My colleagues' wives wear designer clothes. You look like you shop at market stalls." Adiz looked down at her simple but elegant dress. It was well made, comfortable, and appropriate. "I'm comfortable in this. Does it really matter what brand label is inside?" "It matters what people think," Derek snapped, his stress making him cruel. "It's embarrassing. People ask me why my wife dresses like she can't afford better." "And what do you tell them?" Adiz asked quietly. Derek didn't answer. He just grabbed his keys and headed for the door. That exchange hurt more than Adiz wanted to admit. For the first time, she wondered if she had made a mistake in hiding her wealth. Would Derek have more respect for her if he knew the truth? Or would knowing the truth change him in ways she wouldn't like? But the real problems came from Derek's family. Derek's mother, Patience Nwosu, was a woman who believed that a person's worth could be measured by their jewelry and designer handbags. She wore her status like armor, expensive shoes, luxury accessories, clothes that announced her presence before she entered a room. Never mind that most of these items were purchased on credit that the family couldn't afford. Never mind that the family business was failing. Appearances were everything to Patience, and she couldn't understand why her daughter-in-law didn't share this priority. From the beginning, she made it clear that Adiz wasn't good enough for her son. Derek could have married someone with connections, Patience would say at family gatherings, loud enough for Adiz to hear. Someone from a prominent family who could help our business. Someone with resources and influence. Instead, he chose this. Derek's two sisters, Ngozi and Ifeoma, were carbon copies of their mother. They measured everyone by external appearances and found Adiz lacking every single time. Ngozi, the older sister, was particularly vicious. She had married a man from a wealthy family and never let anyone forget it. She wore her husband's success like a crown and looked down on anyone she perceived as beneath her status. "Adiz, where did you get those shoes?" Ngozi asked at one family dinner, her voice dripping with false concern. "They look like something from 10 years ago." "They're comfortable," Adiz replied calmly. "I've had them for a while." "Clearly," Ifeoma laughed. "Derek, you really need to do something about your wife's wardrobe. She's making the family look poor. What will people think when they see the wife of Nwosu dressed like a what?" Adiz asked, her voice still calm but her eyes sharp. Ifeoma backtracked slightly. We have a reputation to maintain. Appearances matter in our social circle." Derek, sitting at the head of the table, said nothing. He looked uncomfortable but didn't defend his wife. He just looked away, avoiding the confrontation. That silence hurt more than any insult his sisters could throw. After that dinner, Adiz confronted Derek in the car. "Why didn't you say anything? Why did you let them talk to me that way?" "They weren't that bad," Derek said, not meeting her eyes. They come from a world where these things matter." "And you agree with them?" Adiz asked, her voice breaking. "I didn't say that," Derek replied. "But would it kill you to make an effort? Just to keep the peace?" Adiz felt tears building. "Make an effort?" "Derek, I came to dinner. I was polite. I answered their questions. What more do you want from me? I want you to fit in." Derek exploded. "I want my family to accept you. I want them to stop asking me why I married someone who looks like she can't afford a decent dress." The words hung in the air between them, toxic and irretrievable. "I see," Adiz said quietly. "So the problem isn't that your family is cruel. The problem is that I don't meet their standards." "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," Adiz interrupted. "You want me to change who I am to please people who have shown me nothing but disrespect since the day we met." Derek sighed heavily. "Can we not do this now? I'm exhausted." That became his standard response to difficult conversations. He was always too tired, too stressed, too busy to address the problems in their marriage or the way his family treated his wife. And over time, Adiz noticed a pattern developing. Derek's family constantly needed money. There was always a crisis, always an emergency, always a reason why they needed financial help. "Adiz, my mother needs help with her medical bills," Derek would say. "Can you spare some money? My sister's daughter needs school fees. Can we help out? The business is having cash flow problems. Do you know anyone who might invest?" And because Adiz loved Derek, and because she believed that's what family did for each other, she helped. Every single time. She paid Patience's medical bills, expensive procedures that the family insurance didn't cover. She covered school fees for her nieces. She even anonymously invested in Wosu Construction, arranging for a mysterious benefactor to inject capital that kept the company afloat. She did all of this through carefully structured transactions that couldn't be traced back to her. She set up shell corporations, used intermediaries, and ensured that the Nwosu family never knew where the money was really coming from. Derek thought she was asking wealthy friends for help. His family thought they had found a generous investor who believed in their business. Nobody knew the truth, that Adiz was personally funding their entire lifestyle while they mocked her for her modest appearance. The irony was painful. She was paying for Ngozi's designer handbags and Ifeoma's luxury apartment. She was covering Patience's medical treatments and keeping Derek's family business from collapsing. And in return, they treated her like an embarrassment. But Adiz told herself it was worth it. She was doing it for Derek, for the marriage she hoped would improve once his stress decreased. She kept waiting for things to get better. She kept believing that if she just gave enough, loved enough, supported enough, Derek would remember why he married her. His family would eventually see her value. She was wrong. Instead, the more she gave, the more entitled they became. The more she helped, the less gratitude they showed. The money she provided wasn't seen as generosity, it was seen as what they deserved, what they were owed. And the insults continued. The mockery intensified. At every family gathering, there would be comments about her appearance, her car, her house, her choices. And at every gathering, Derek would stay silent or, worse, agree with them. "You know, they have a point," he told her one night after a particularly brutal family dinner. "You could try a little harder. Maybe buy some nicer clothes. Get a newer car. We can afford it." Adiz looked at him in disbelief. "We can afford it? Derek, do you even know how much money we have?" "From your investments, you mean?" Derek said. "Sure, you do okay. But that's not the same as real wealth. That's not the same as what my sister's husbands have." Adiz felt something crack inside her. Her husband had no idea who she really was. And worse, he had no curiosity to find out. He had built an entire narrative about her in his head, a narrative where she was comfortable but not successful, competent but not exceptional, adequate but not extraordinary. And he preferred that narrative because it allowed him to feel superior. That's when Adiz began to understand a painful truth. Derek didn't want a partner who challenged him or outshone him. He wanted someone he could look down on, someone who made him feel bigger by being smaller. Her simplicity wasn't valued as a virtue. It was seen as a flaw. Her generosity wasn't appreciated as kindness. It was taken for granted as an obligation. And the family she had been supporting for years saw her not as their benefactor, but as their burden. "I'm tired, Chioma," Adiz confessed to her best friend over lunch one afternoon. "I'm tired of being mocked. I'm tired of defending my choices. I'm tired of watching my husband say nothing while his family tears me apart." Chioma reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then stop defending. Stop trying to prove yourself to people who have decided not to see your worth. And maybe it's time Derek learned the truth about who you really are." "What if it changes everything?" Adiz asked. "Darling," Chioma said gently, "everything is already changed. The question is whether you're going to keep pretending it hasn't." Adiz went home that evening with a decision weighing on her. Should she tell Derek the truth? Should she reveal that she was the CEO of Okonkwo Industries, that she was worth billions, that she had been personally funding his family's lifestyle while they mocked her? She was still debating this question when Derek came home and dropped a bombshell. "My mother is planning a big Thanksgiving celebration," he announced. "She wants to invite business associates, potential investors for the company. It's important that we make a good impression." "Derek, I don't think I should go," Adiz said quietly. "Your family makes it very clear that they don't want me there." "That's ridiculous," Derek said, though his tone lacked conviction. "You're my wife. Of course you should be there." "Then act like I'm your wife," Adiz said, her voice stronger. "Defend me when they insult me. Support me when they mock me. Show me that you actually want me there, not that you're just going through the motions." Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Just come to the dinner, Adiz. Try to fit in. Try to make an effort. Can you do that for me?" Adiz looked at the man she had married 7 years ago and barely recognized him. Where was the person who had asked about her dreams? Who had valued her thoughts and ideas? Who had made her feel seen and appreciated? That man was gone, replaced by someone who asked her to shrink so others could feel bigger. "I'll come to the dinner," Adiz said finally. "But Derek, this can't continue. Something has to change." "You're right," Derek said, and for a moment, Adiz felt hope. Things do need to change. She had no idea how prophetic those words would be. The days leading up to Thanksgiving were filled with tension. Derek was stressed about the dinner, worried about making the right impression on potential investors. His family was planning an elaborate celebration at a luxury hotel, the kind of event designed to showcase status and wealth, regardless of whether that wealth was real or borrowed. Adiz, meanwhile, was making her own preparations. She had reached a decision. She called her CFO, Mr. Obi, to a confidential meeting at her private office. "I need you to prepare 2 sets of documents," she told him. "First, a complete accounting of all investments, loans, and financial support we've provided to Nwosu Construction and the Nwosu family over the past 5 years. Every naira, every transaction, every payment." Mr. Obi's eyebrows rose. "Everything? That's extensive, Mrs. Okonkwo. May I ask why?" "Because I'm done hiding," Adiz said. "And I want to know exactly what my generosity has cost me." "And the second set of documents?" Mr. Obi asked. "Withdrawal paperwork," Adiz said calmly. "Complete dissolution of all Nwosu family investments, ready to execute immediately upon my authorization." Mr. Obi studied his boss carefully. In 10 years of working for her, he had never seen this expression on her face. Not anger exactly, but absolute clarity. "Consider it done," he said. "How soon do you need this?" "Thanksgiving Day," Adiz replied. "And Mr. Obi?" "I want a team ready to accompany me to an event that evening. I may need backup." Mr. Obi nodded. He didn't ask questions. He had learned long ago that Adiz Okonkwo didn't make impulsive decisions. If she was preparing for something this significant, she had excellent reasons. The morning of Thanksgiving arrived cold and gray. Adiz woke early and spent time in quiet reflection. She thought about the past 7 years, about the woman she had been when she married Derek, about the woman she had become. She had shrunk herself. She had hidden her light. She had made herself smaller and smaller, hoping that would make her more lovable, more acceptable. But it hadn't worked. No matter how small she made herself, it was never enough. Because the problem wasn't her size, it was that she was surrounded by people who needed to look down on someone to feel elevated. "No more," she whispered to herself in the mirror. "Today, I choose me." She dressed carefully for the dinner, a simple but elegant dress, comfortable shoes, minimal jewelry. The same style she always wore, the same approach that had earned her so much mockery. But this time, she wore it like armor. This time, she knew exactly who she was beneath the simple exterior. Derek was agitated all morning. "Please, Adiz," he said as they prepared to leave. "Just try not to say anything controversial tonight. My mother has invited some important people. I need this to go well." "Don't worry," Adiz said calmly. "I'll be on my best behavior." She didn't mention that best behavior might mean something very different than Derek imagined. They arrived at the luxury hotel where the Thanksgiving celebration was being held. The ballroom was decorated extravagantly, crystal chandeliers, expensive floral arrangements, a live band playing soft music. The guest list included about 200 people, business associates, wealthy friends, potential investors, and anyone the Nwosu family wanted to impress. It was everything Adiz disliked, excessive, showy, designed to prove status rather than celebrate gratitude. The moment they walked in, Adiz felt the familiar stares and heard the whispers. "That's Derek's wife. She couldn't even dress up for Thanksgiving. I heard she's the reason their business is struggling. Dead weight. Poor Derek. Stuck with someone who can't even make an effort." Derek heard the whispers too. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He simply guided Adiz to a table in the corner, away from the important guests, away from the spotlight. "I'll be circulating," he told her. Just try to blend in, okay?" Adiz watched her husband walk away to schmooze with potential investors, leaving her alone at a table like an embarrassing relative to be hidden. Derek's mother, Patience, approached wearing a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her jewelry sparkled under the chandelier lights. "Adiz, darling," Patience said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I'm so glad you could make it. Though I must say, I was hoping you'd wear something a bit more festive. This is a celebration, not a casual day out." "I'm comfortable, Ma," Adiz replied evenly. "Comfortable," Patience repeated, as if tasting something sour. "Yes, well, comfort is one thing. Representing the family with pride is quite another. We have important people here tonight. First impressions matter." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping. "Between you and me, dear, several people have already commented on your presentation. It reflects on Derek, you know. On all of us." Adiz met Patience's eyes steadily. "I'll keep that in mind." Patience smiled, satisfied that she had made her point, and glided away to greet more important guests. The evening continued in this painful vein. Adiz sat quietly at her corner table, largely ignored except when someone wanted to make a joke at her expense. Derek's sister Ngozi approached with a group of her wealthy friends, all dressed in designer clothes and dripping with jewelry. "Everyone, this is my sister-in-law, Adiz," Ngozi announced with exaggerated enthusiasm. "She's very down-to-earth. Practically lives underground, actually." The group laughed on cue. One of Ngozi's friends, a woman wearing enough diamonds to fund a small school, looked Adiz up and down. How refreshing to meet someone so unconcerned with appearances. It must be freeing, not caring what anyone thinks. "It is," Adiz agreed calmly. "I wish I could be that brave," another woman said with obviously false admiration. "Just wearing whatever, driving whatever, not worrying about maintaining standards." More laughter. More quiet humiliation. Ifioma joined the group, carrying a champagne glass. "We keep trying to help Adiz understand the importance of presentation," she said loudly. "But she's very attached to her economical lifestyle." "There's nothing wrong with being frugal," one of the men said, trying to be kind but making it worse. "In these economic times, we could all learn from such discipline." The implication was clear. Adiz dressed simply because she couldn't afford better, not because she chose to. Across the room, Derek stood talking with a group of potential investors. He glanced at Adiz once, saw what was happening, and quickly looked away. Again, that silence. That choice not to defend her. That willingness to let her be humiliated if it meant avoiding awkward confrontation. Adiz felt her phone buzz in her purse. A message from Mr. Obi. "Team is in position outside. Documents are ready. Awaiting your signal." She typed back, "Stand by. Will signal when needed." Then came the moment that would change everything. Patience Nwosu stood up and clinked her champagne glass loudly, calling for everyone's attention. The band stopped playing. Conversations halted. All eyes turned to the matriarch of the Nwosu family. "Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this special Thanksgiving celebration," Patience began, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "As you know, the Nwosu family has always valued success, ambition, and dignity. We've built our reputation on excellence, on upholding certain standards, on associating with the right kinds of people." Adiz felt her stomach drop. She knew where this was going. Patience continued, "Which is why I've been encouraging my son Derek to make some important life decisions. Some very necessary changes to ensure that the Nwosu family continues to thrive and maintain its standing in society." The room fell completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "Derek has finally agreed that it's time to move forward with his life," Patience said, her voice taking on a triumphant tone. "To find a partner who can truly support him, who can help elevate this family to where we belong, who can contribute rather than detract." She paused for effect, looking directly at Adiz. "Some marriages are mistakes. Some people simply don't belong in certain worlds. No matter how much we try to include them, no matter how patient we are, no matter how many chances we give them." Gasps rippled through the crowd. People were turning to look at Adiz, their expressions ranging from shock to pity to poorly concealed excitement at witnessing such drama. "Tonight," Patience announced, "we're celebrating not just Thanksgiving, but also new beginnings. Fresh starts. The opportunity for Derek to finally be with someone worthy of the Nwosu name." She turned to her son. "Derek, I think it's time." Derek walked slowly toward Adiz's table. His face was blank, carefully composed to show no emotion. In his hands, he carried a leather folder. The crowd watched in fascinated silence as Derek reached his wife's table and stood before her. "What is this?" Adiz whispered, though she already knew. Derek placed the folder on the table in front of her. "Divorce papers," he said flatly, his voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I need you to sign them." The ballroom erupted. Gasps, shocked whispers, people pulling out their phones to capture the moment. Adiz's hands trembled as she opened the folder. There they were, official divorce documents, professionally prepared by an expensive law firm. Derek had already signed every required page. All they needed was her signature to make it final. She looked up at the man she had loved for 7 years. The man she had supported through every crisis. The man she had helped in ways he couldn't even imagine. "You're doing this here?" "No." "In front of all these people?" "It's better this way," Derek said, his voice emotionless. "Clean break. No drawn-out drama. You sign, we both move on." "No drama." Adiz's voice cracked. "You're ending our marriage at a public celebration, and you think there's no drama?" "You're the one making it dramatic," Patience interjected, stepping closer. "Just sign the papers, dear. Let my son move on with his life. You've held him back long enough. Surely you can see that you were never right for this family." Adiz felt tears building behind her eyes. She looked around the ballroom, at the 200 faces watching her with amusement, curiosity, pity, or indifference. Not one person looked sympathetic. Not one person stood up for her. Not one single guest found this public humiliation inappropriate or cruel. They were all enjoying the show. She looked back at Derek. "After everything I've done for you, for your family, this is how you treat me. What have you done?" Derek asked, his voice cold and cutting. "You've been a weight around my neck since we got married. My business is failing. My family is struggling financially. And all you do is sit around in your thrift store clothes, acting like you're above everyone, refusing to make any effort to help or contribute." The tears came then. Hot, silent tears that Adiz couldn't control. 7 years of love, 7 years of support, 7 years of silent generosity, and this was how he saw her contribution. As nothing. Patience's smile was triumphant. "Oh, don't cry, dear. You'll find someone at your level eventually. Someone who appreciates simplicity. Someone who doesn't require a partner with resources or connections or the ability to help advance their position in life." The room laughed. Actually laughed at a woman's pain, at a marriage ending, at public humiliation. Ngozi's voice rang out from across the room. "Finally! Maybe now we can get someone proper into this family. Someone who knows how to dress, how to act, how to be an asset instead of an embarrassment." "It's about time," Ifioma added, her voice full of mock relief. 7 years was far too long to wait. We've been patient enough. More laughter. More mockery. More people enjoying the spectacle of a woman being torn apart in public. Adiz picked up the pen with trembling hands. She could barely see the signature line through her tears, but she found it. What none of these people knew, what they couldn't possibly have known, was that at that exact moment, 3 black SUVs had just pulled into the hotel parking lot. Inside those vehicles were 6 executives from Okonkwo Industries, including Mr. Obi, the chief legal officer. They were accompanied by 3 lawyers, 2 accountants, and 4 private security personnel. They were coming because Adiz had sent a message 30 minutes earlier: "Prepare withdrawal documents. Full dissolution of all Nwosu family investments. Execute immediately upon my signal." Mr. Obi had responded, "Are you absolutely certain? This will have severe consequences for them." Adiz had typed back, "I'm certain. They've made their choice. Now I'm making mine." Now, as Adiz signed her name on the divorce papers with tears streaming down her face, her phone buzzed again in her purse. "Mr. Obi, we're entering the building now. Teams in position. Awaiting your confirmation." Adiz put down the pen. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. She took a deep, steadying breath. Then she did something that surprised everyone in that ballroom. She stood up. She smoothed her simple dress. She picked up her purse. And she smiled, a small, knowing smile that didn't quite reach her eyes but carried a weight that made several people near her feel inexplicably nervous. "Congratulations, Derek," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "You're finally free. Free from the burden of a wife who wasn't good enough for your family. Free from the embarrassment of someone who couldn't meet your standards." She turned to face Patience. "And congratulations to you, Ma. You've finally gotten what you wanted, your son back, available for someone more suitable." Patience beamed, missing the edge in Adiz's tone. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, dear. It's for the best, truly." "Oh, it absolutely is," Adiz agreed. "For the best." She picked up her phone and typed a single word, "Now." 30 seconds later, the ballroom doors opened. 3 men and 3 women in expensive business suits entered the ballroom, moving with a kind of purpose and authority that made conversations stop and heads turn. They were led by Mr. Obi, a distinguished man in his 50s carrying a leather portfolio. Behind him were legal representatives, each carrying their own files, and bringing up the rear were security personnel, their presence professional but unmistakably protective. The hotel manager rushed forward, confused and concerned. "Excuse me, this is a private event." Mr. Obi produced a business card. "We're here on official business with Mrs. Adiz Okonkwo. We have an appointment." He scanned the room until his eyes found Adiz. Mrs. Okonkwo. Every eye in the ballroom turned from the new arrivals to Adiz. And everyone saw something they had never seen before. The moment Adiz turned to face Mr. Obi, her entire demeanor changed. The woman who had been sitting quietly in the corner, crying as she signed divorce papers, transformed before their eyes. Her shoulders straightened. Her spine became steel. Her eyes, red from crying just moments ago, became clear and focused and absolutely commanding. This wasn't the meek, quiet woman they'd been mocking all evening. This was someone else entirely. "Yes, Mr. Obi," Adiz said, and her voice was different too. Still calm, still controlled, but with an undertone of authority that made people instinctively pay attention. "Thank you for coming so promptly." "We have the documents you requested," Mr. Obi replied, approaching her and handing over the portfolio. "Everything is prepared for your signature, as discussed." Patience Nwosu stepped forward, her face a mixture of confusion and irritation. "Excuse me, who are you people? This is a private family event. You're interrupting a very important celebration." Mr. Obi turned to her with a professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ma'am, I'm Mr. Obi, Chief Legal Officer for Okonkwo Industries. We're here on urgent business with Mrs. Okonkwo, as I mentioned." "Okonkwo Industries," Ngozi whispered, her champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. "Isn't that one of the largest corporations in West Africa?" Ifeoma finished, her face going pale. "With holdings in manufacturing, real estate, technology. Worth billions," someone in the crowd added. A murmur rippled through the ballroom. Okonkwo Industries was a household name in Nigeria and beyond. Everyone knew the company. Everyone admired its success and rapid growth. Everyone wondered about the mysterious CEO who had built such an empire. Derek was staring at Adiz with growing confusion and a dawning sense of dread. "What's going on? Why are these people calling you Mrs. Okonkwo? Why are they here?" Adiz opened the portfolio and began reviewing documents, her attention completely focused on the papers in front of her. "Because that's my name, Derek. Adiz Okonkwo. It always has been. I never took your name when we married. You just assumed I did." "I don't understand," Derek said, his voice rising. "What does that have to do with Okonkwo Industries?" One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Perhaps I can clarify. Mrs. Adiz Okonkwo is the founder and CEO of Okonkwo Industries. She has been for the past 12 years. The ballroom exploded in shocked gasps and exclamations. Derek's face went from confused to white as a sheet. "That's impossible. You said you did consulting work. You said you had some investments. You never said." "You never asked," Adiz interrupted, still reading through documents. "In 7 years of marriage, Derek, you never once asked about the details of my work. You never visited my office. You never showed any interest in what I did all day. You made assumptions, and I let you." Mr. Obi cleared his throat. "Mrs. Okonkwo, we need your signature on several documents tonight. First, the investment withdrawal forms. The board has been briefed and is standing by for confirmation." "Investment withdrawal?" Patience's voice was shrill, her earlier confidence crumbling. "What investment? What are you talking about?" Adiz looked up from the documents, and when she spoke, her voice carried clearly across the silent ballroom. Every person in that room was straining to hear every word. The $100 million that's been keeping Wosu Construction afloat for the past 5 years, Adiz said calmly. The mysterious benefactor who saved your company from bankruptcy? The anonymous investor who funded your expansion projects, covered your debts, provided emergency capital 3 separate times when you were on the verge of collapse. She paused, letting the information sink in. That was me. The silence was absolute. People's mouths literally hung open in shock. Derek grabbed the edge of a nearby table for support. What? No. That can't be. The investor was... We were told it was a private equity firm. A foreign investor. They never... You never... I used shell corporations, Adiz explained matter-of-factly. Subsidiary companies that couldn't be traced back to Okonkwo Industries. I wanted to help your family without them knowing it was me, because I knew that if you discovered I had money, everything would change. She turned to Patience, whose face had gone from smug superiority to absolute horror. Those medical bills you thought were covered by some generous insurance policy? I paid them. Every single naira of your cancer treatment, your surgeries, your medications. That was me. Patience's hand went to her throat, her expensive necklace suddenly feeling like it was choking her. Adiz continued, her voice never rising but carrying undeniable power. The school fees for your granddaughters at that private academy? I paid them. The rent for Ngozi's luxury apartment when her husband's business was struggling? I paid it. The car payments for Ifioma when she couldn't afford them? I covered those too. Ngozi actually stumbled backward, nearly falling. Someone caught her arm. The expansion project that saved your construction company last year? Adiz went on. The one that got you those lucrative government contracts? I funded it. The new equipment, the training programs, the marketing campaign that rebuilt your reputation, all of it came from Okonkwo Industries subsidiaries. Mr. Obi pulled out a tablet and walked over to Patience. Ma'am, these are the financial records. Every transaction, every payment, every investment. All documented and verified. Patience's hands shook violently as she took the tablet. She scrolled through screen after screen of financial statements, bank transfers, investment documents. Each one showing money flowing from various Okonkwo Industries accounts into Nwosu family coffers. Millions and millions of naira. Years of support. All from the woman they had been mocking, insulting, treating like worthless garbage. This can't be real, Patience whispered. You're nobody. You don't even dress well. You drive an old car. You live in a modest house. You can't possibly be. I'm the founder and CEO of Okonkwo Industries, Adiz stated clearly. I'm worth approximately $2.3 billion, according to the latest financial audit. I drive that old car because it was a gift from my father and it reminds me of where I came from. I dress simply because I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I live in a modest house because I value comfort and meaning over ostentation. She stepped closer to Patience, and despite being younger and smaller, in that moment Adiz seemed to tower over the older woman. I stayed quiet about my wealth because I wanted my husband to love me for who I am, not what I have. I wanted to be valued as a person, not as a resource to be used. But you know what I learned, Ma. Patience couldn't speak. She just shook her head. I learned that you're incapable of valuing anything you can't see, Adiz said. You measure worth in designer labels and expensive jewelry. You evaluate people based on appearances and displays of wealth. You couldn't see my value because I wasn't performing wealth the way you understand it. She turned to address the entire ballroom, her voice ringing with quiet authority. Let this be a lesson to everyone here. The person you mock might be the one keeping your world together. The woman you look down on might be the only thing standing between you and complete ruin. Judge people by their character, not their clothes. Measure worth by integrity, not by Instagram posts. Derek finally found his voice. Adiz, wait. If you've been helping us all this time, why didn't you just tell me? Why the secrecy? Adiz looked at her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, with something close to pity. Because I wanted you to love me, Derek. Not my money, not my company, not what I could do for you. Just me. I wanted to know that you valued me for who I am at my core. Her voice cracked slightly. But you didn't. You never did. You valued me less with each passing year. You let your family mock me. You joined in their criticism. You made me feel worthless while I was personally funding your entire existence. One of the lawyers approached with another document. Mrs. Okonkwo, the property transfer papers? Yes, Adiz said, taking the document. She turned back to Derek. This is the deed to the house we've been living in. The mortgage you thought you were paying. Derek's eyes widened in realization. Automatic transfers from my accounts, Adiz confirmed. I set it up to make you feel like you were contributing, like you were the provider. The house has been in my name the entire time. I was just letting you feel like it was yours. She signed the property transfer document. As of now, your name is being removed from all property records. You have 24 hours to collect your belongings. Adiz, please, Derek started. Don't, she interrupted, her voice sharp for the first time. Don't you dare. You just publicly divorced me to please your mother. You humiliated me in front of 200 people. You mocked me, insulted me, and treated me like I was worthless. And all the while, I was the one keeping your family's entire world from collapsing. She picked up another document from the portfolio. This is the withdrawal notification for Nwosu Construction. Effective immediately, Okonkwo Industries is recalling all investments. The $100 million in current funding will be withdrawn. All contracts will be terminated. All ongoing projects funded by our subsidiaries will be halted. Patience made a choking sound. You can't. That will destroy us. The company will go bankrupt. We'll lose everything. You'll lose what was never really yours to begin with, Adiz corrected coldly. You'll lose the artificial safety net I provided while you treated me like dirt. What you do after that is your problem, not mine. Mr. Obi added, there's also the matter of the outstanding loan. $45 million, currently keeping Nwosu Construction operational. Mrs. Okonkwo has opted to call in that loan. Full payment is due within 30 days. Derek's legs actually buckled. He had to sit down. $45 million? We don't have $45 million. The company doesn't have anything close to that. We'll have to declare bankruptcy. We'll lose the business. Everything my family built for 3 generations. Everything my money has been preserving for 5 years, Adiz interrupted. Don't pretend this is some grand legacy you built. Your family was failing, and I saved you. Multiple times. And this is how you repaid me. Ifeoma stepped forward, tears streaming down her face, all her earlier arrogance completely gone. Please, Adiz. Think about what you're doing. Think about Derek's future. Think about the family. I thought about the family for 7 years, Adiz said quietly. I put the family first every single day. I helped when you needed it. I stayed silent when you mocked me. I supported Derek through every crisis. And what did I get in return? She gestured to the divorce papers still sitting on the table. Public humiliation. 7 years of disrespect. A husband who valued his mother's opinion more than his wife's feelings. A family that measured my worth by my clothes instead of my character. Ngozi was openly crying now, her makeup running down her face. "We didn't know. If we had known who you were. If you had known I was rich, you would have treated me differently," Adiz finished. "That's exactly the problem, Ngozi. You would have respected money, not me. You would have valued my bank account, not my person. And that tells me everything I need to know about your character." She turned back to Mr. Obi. "What else needs my signature?" "The lease terminations for the properties we've been subsidizing," he replied, handing her more documents. 2 apartments and an office space. Adiz signed each document. With every signature, she could hear gasps and soft crying from the Nwosu family members as they realized just how much of their lifestyle had been dependent on her generosity. Patience suddenly grabbed Adiz's arm, all her pride and arrogance stripped away, replaced by desperate pleading. "Please, please, I'm begging you. Don't do this. We'll do better. We'll treat you with respect. We'll appreciate you. Just please don't destroy us." Adiz looked at the hand gripping her arm, then up at Patience's face. "Where was this humility 2 hours ago when you were announcing my divorce to a room full of people? Where was this respect when you've been mocking my clothes for 7 years? Where was this appreciation when I was anonymously paying your medical bills?" She gently but firmly removed Patience's hand from her arm. "You're not sorry you treated me badly. You're sorry you lost your cash cow. There's a difference." One of Derek's business associates, a man who had been watching the entire scene unfold, spoke up. "Mrs. Okonkwo, surely there's room for negotiation here? Perhaps a gradual withdrawal instead of immediate? These people have families, employees who will suffer." Adiz turned to face him. "You're absolutely right. Nwosu Construction employs about 200 people who will be affected by this decision. People who have nothing to do with how I was treated." For a moment, hope flickered in Derek's eyes. "Which is why," Adiz continued, "Okonkwo Industries will be offering employment packages to all Nwosu construction workers who want them. We're expanding our manufacturing division and need skilled labor. Anyone from Nwosu Construction who wants to join us will receive fair wages, benefits, and job security, things they apparently haven't had while working for a company on the verge of constant collapse." She looked directly at Derek. "I'm not punishing your employees for your mistakes. But I'm also not going to keep funding a family business run by people who lack both business acumen and basic human decency." Mr. Obi held up one final document. "And this is the amendment to the divorce settlement." Derek looked up sharply. "Amendment? What amendment?" The lawyer who had accompanied Mr. Obi stepped forward. "Mr. Nwosu, the divorce papers you had Mrs. Okonkwo sign tonight were prepared without full disclosure of the marital assets. You were unaware of Mrs. Okonkwo's wealth, which means the division of assets in those papers is completely inequitable." He continued, "Furthermore, there's documented evidence of financial abuse, repeated coercion for money that was given to your family under pressure, while simultaneously subjecting Mrs. Okonkwo to emotional abuse and humiliation. Any judge will throw out your original divorce papers and mandate a new settlement." "However," Mr. Obi interjected, "Mrs. Okonkwo is prepared to be generous. She's willing to accept the divorces filed, with no claims against your future earnings or assets, on one condition." "What condition?" Derek asked hoarsely. "That you and your family sign non-disclosure agreements about her identity and wealth," Mr. Obi explained. "You won't speak to the media, you won't sell your story, you won't attempt to profit from your connection to her in any way." He paused. "If you violate this NDA, Mrs. Okonkwo reserves the right to pursue legal action for the fraudulent documents you signed in her name 3 years ago." Derek's face went even paler. "What fraudulent documents?" The lawyer opened a folder and showed him copies of business loan applications from 3 years prior. "These loan applications for Nwosu Construction? You signed them using power of attorney, claiming it was granted by Mrs. Okonkwo. But she never granted you that authority. You forged her signature on the authorization forms. Derek looked at the documents, recognition dawning on his face. I thought since we were married, I had the right to. You didn't, the lawyer said flatly. That's fraud. Mrs. Okonkwo could press criminal charges. But she's willing to let it go if you sign the NDA and accept the divorce terms as written. Adiz watched Derek process this information. She watched him realize that she held all the cards, that she had always held all the cards, that everything he thought he knew about their marriage had been an illusion. Why? Derek finally asked, his voice broken. Why did you help us if you were just going to take it all away? Adiz felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were tears of grief for the marriage she'd hoped to have, not the one she'd endured. I helped because I loved you. I supported your family because I thought that's what you did for the people you love. I stayed silent about my wealth because I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I have. She wiped away a tear. But you made your choice tonight, Derek. You chose your mother's approval over your wife's dignity. You chose public humiliation over private conversation. You chose cruelty over kindness. I'm sorry, Derek whispered. God, Adiz, I'm so sorry. I was stupid. I was blind. I let my family poison me against you. Please, give me another chance. Let me fix this. Adiz shook her head slowly. You can't fix this. This isn't a mistake you made tonight. This is who you revealed yourself to be over 7 years. Every time you stayed silent while your family mocked me. Every time you criticized my choices to match their complaints. Every time you made me feel small so you could feel big. She picked up her purse and the divorce papers. You wanted this divorce, Derek. You got it. Now you get to live with the consequences. She turned to Mr. Obi. Are we done here? Yes, Mrs. Okonkwo. All documents are signed and will be filed first thing Monday morning. Adiz nodded. She looked around the ballroom one last time, at the 200 faces that had been laughing at her an hour ago, now watching her with shock, fear, or dawning respect. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, she said quietly. I hope you all learned something tonight about judging books by their covers. She walked toward the exit, her legal team falling into step around her. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, people stepping back to give her space. At the door, she paused and turned back. Her eyes found Derek one last time. For what it's worth, she said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom, I really did love you. The man I married, anyway. I don't know who you became. And then she walked out, leaving behind a room full of people who would never forget the night they learned that the quiet woman in simple clothes was the most powerful person in the room. The aftermath of Thanksgiving was brutal for the Nwosu family. Within 48 hours, Okonkwo Industries had withdrawn every investment. The $100 million in active funding was pulled. The emergency credit lines were closed. The contracts that had been keeping Nwosu Construction afloat were terminated. The company's creditors, discovering that their mysterious benefactor was gone, began circling like sharks. Banks called in loans. Suppliers demanded immediate payment for outstanding invoices. Contractors abandoned half-finished projects. Within a week, Nwosu Construction's offices were in chaos. We have payroll due in 3 days and no money to cover it, the company's accountant told Derek. We have equipment rentals we can't pay for. We have materials we've ordered but can't afford to collect. And the bank is threatening to freeze our accounts if we don't make the minimum payment on our loans. Derek sat at his desk, the weight of complete failure crushing him. How much do we need immediately? 15 million naira just to make payroll and keep the lights on, the accountant replied. But that only buys us 2 weeks. After that, we need another 20 million. And the month after that. I get it, Derek interrupted. We're dead in the water. His mother had been calling him every hour, screaming, crying, begging him to fix this. His sisters had shown up at his temporary hotel room because he no longer had a house. Adiz had changed the locks within 24 hours, demanding that he do something. Call her, Ngozi had screamed. Beg her. Get down on your knees if you have to. Promise her anything. Just get her to change her mind. She's not going to change her mind, Derek had replied quietly. We made our choice. Now we live with it. But his family wasn't ready to accept that. Patience tried calling Adiz directly, but found her number blocked. She tried showing up at Okonkwo Industries headquarters, but was stopped at security and told that Mrs. Okonkwo was not available and had left specific instructions not to be contacted by anyone from the Nwosu family. Please, Patience had begged the security guard. Just 5 minutes. I need to apologize. I need to make her understand that we didn't know. Ma'am, the guard had replied firmly, Mrs. Okonkwo has made her position clear. She has no interest in hearing from you or your family. Now I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. Ngozi tried a different approach. She reached out to Chioma, Adiz's best friend, sending desperate messages on social media. Please, I know Adiz listens to you. Tell her we're sorry. Tell her we understand we were wrong. Tell her we'll do anything to make this right. Chioma's response was ice-cold. You had 7 years to treat her with respect. You chose mockery. You had every opportunity to see her value. You chose to judge her by her clothes. Now you're facing consequences and you want mercy? Where was your mercy when she was crying while signing divorce papers you forced on her at a public event? Don't contact me again. Ifeoma tried the business angle. She reached out to mutual acquaintances in Lagos, trying to find someone who could put in a good word for the family, someone who could convince Adiz to reconsider. But she quickly discovered something that shocked her. Everyone in the Lagos business community knew exactly what had happened at that Thanksgiving dinner. Are you kidding? One business associate had laughed when Ifeoma called. The story is everywhere. Billionaire CEO publicly divorced by husband who didn't know her worth. It's been trending on social media for days. You all look terrible. Nobody is going to help you. They destroy their own relationship with Adiz Okonkwo, and she's worth 100 times what your family business was ever worth. The story had indeed spread like wildfire through Lagos social circles and beyond. Several people at the Thanksgiving dinner had recorded parts of the confrontation. While Adiz's legal team had managed to prevent full videos from being posted, part of the NDA Derek had signed, enough had leaked out that everyone understood the basic narrative. A powerful, wealthy woman had been mocked and humiliated by her husband's family, who had no idea she was the one funding their entire lifestyle. When they publicly divorced her, she pulled her support and revealed the truth. The public reaction was overwhelmingly on Adiz's side. She's my hero, one woman posted on Twitter. How many of us have been made to feel small by people who are actually beneath us? She showed that you don't have to tolerate disrespect, no matter who it comes from. The audacity of that family, another person wrote. They were living off her money while mocking her clothes? That's not just ungrateful, it's evil. Business publications ran analysis pieces about Adiz's leadership style and her company's remarkable growth. Several noted that she had built a multi-billion-dollar empire while maintaining personal humility, a rare combination. Forbes Nigeria reached out for an interview. Adiz declined but released a brief statement through her PR team. I believe in hard work, integrity, and treating all people with dignity regardless of their appearance or social status. These values built my company and guide my life. I hope this situation reminds people to look beyond surfaces and measure worth by character, not clothes. The statement was perfect, gracious enough not to seem vindictive, but clear enough that everyone understood the message. Meanwhile, Derek's life was falling apart in multiple ways simultaneously. The divorce was finalized within 2 weeks, expedited because Derek didn't contest anything. He couldn't afford to. The fraudulent document charges hanging over his head meant he had no leverage to negotiate. He lost the house, the car he'd been driving, which turned out to be leased through one of Adi's companies, and most of the possessions he'd thought were his but which had actually been purchased with Adi's money. He moved into a small one-bedroom apartment, the kind of place he would have been embarrassed to be seen in 6 months earlier. Nwosu Construction officially declared bankruptcy 8 weeks after Thanksgiving. The company that had been in Derek's family for 3 generations was liquidated to pay debts. The family home, a large house in Ikoyi that Patience had been so proud of, was sold to cover personal loans that came due when the business collapsed. Patience moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a middle-class neighborhood, a far cry from the luxury she'd enjoyed for decades. All her designer clothes, her expensive jewelry, her luxury car, all of it sold to pay bills. Derek's sisters faced similar circumstances. Ngozi's husband, embarrassed by the public scandal and struggling with his own business challenges, filed for separation. Ifeoma had to find a job for the first time in her adult life, ending up as an administrative assistant making a fraction of what she'd been used to spending monthly. The fall from grace was complete and devastating. 3 months after Thanksgiving, Derek was working as a mid-level project manager for a small construction firm. His new boss was half his age, demanding, and showed no sympathy for Derek's previous status. "I don't care what you used to be," his boss had said bluntly during Derek's first week. "That was then, this is now. You're here to work, just like everyone else. No special treatment." It was humbling in a way Derek had never experienced. He, who had always been the boss's son, the one with family connections, the one destined to inherit a company, was now just another employee, and not even a particularly impressive one. One evening, Derek was at a small local restaurant grabbing takeout when the TV in the corner showed a news segment about Adi's. She was being interviewed about the Dignity Initiative, a new $500 million fund she had just announced. Derek stopped, frozen, watching the screen. Adi's looked radiant. She wore a beautiful traditional Nigerian outfit, expensive, clearly, but elegant rather than ostentatious. Her hair was styled perfectly. She wore minimal but exquisite jewelry. She looked like exactly what she was, a powerful, successful, confident woman who had nothing to prove. The Dignity Initiative will provide comprehensive support for women who have been financially abused, emotionally manipulated, or trapped in situations where they felt they had to minimize themselves to be accepted, Adi's was explaining to the reporter. The interviewer asked, "Is it true that your own experience inspired this initiative?" Adi's smiled, a genuine smile, though tinged with sadness. "Yes. I spent years in a situation where I made myself smaller to make others comfortable. I hid my success because I wanted to be loved for who I was, not what I had. But I learned an important lesson. People who truly value you will celebrate your success, not resent it." "Any regrets?" the reporter asked. Adi's thought for a moment. "I regret the time I wasted. But I don't regret the lessons learned. Sometimes we need to experience darkness to appreciate light. And sometimes we need to lose ourselves to find ourselves again." Derek watched, tears streaming down his face, as the interview continued. The reporter asked about the impact the initiative was already having. "We've helped over 3,000 women in just 3 months, Adi said. Women who thought they had to stay in situations where they were devalued. Women who didn't realize their own worth because others convinced them they had none. We're providing legal support, financial counseling, housing assistance, job training, everything they need to rebuild their lives with dignity." "That's remarkable," the reporter said. "What would you say to women who are currently in situations where they feel undervalued?" Adiz looked directly into the camera, and Derek felt like she was speaking directly to him. "I would say, your worth is not determined by how others treat you. You are valuable whether people acknowledge it or not. And you don't need anyone's permission to recognize your own value and act accordingly." She continued, "It's not selfish to set boundaries. It's not cruel to walk away from people who diminish you. And it's not revenge to simply stop protecting people from the consequences of their own choices." The interview ended, and Derek stood in the restaurant, crying openly, not caring who saw. The woman behind the counter approached him gently. "Are you okay, sir?" "That woman," Derek said, pointing at the screen. "That's my ex-wife." The woman looked at the screen, then back at Derek with dawning recognition. The story had been everywhere. She clearly knew exactly who he was. "Oh," she said simply. There was no judgment in her voice, but also no sympathy. "I had everything," Derek whispered. "She was right there, and I had everything. And I threw it away because I was too stupid to see it." The woman handed him his takeout bag. "Maybe the lesson isn't about what you had. Maybe it's about learning to value people properly so you don't make the same mistake again." Derek nodded, paid, and left. Back in his small apartment, Derek ate his meal alone, thinking about everything he'd lost. Not just the money, though that loss was staggering. Not just the house or the car or the lifestyle. He'd lost a woman who loved him enough to hide her billions to make sure his love was real. A woman who had supported his family for years while they treated her terribly. A woman who had given him everything and asked only for respect and love in return. And he'd given her nothing but contempt and public humiliation. His phone rang. It was his mother. "Derek, I just saw her on TV," Patience said, her voice thick with tears. Did you see what she's doing? All that money she's using to help other women, that could have been ours. That should have been ours. If you had just—" "Stop," Derek interrupted. "Just stop, Mama. It was never ours. It was hers. And we had no right to it, especially not after how we treated her." "But we didn't know," Patience protested. "If we had known who she was." "That's the point," Derek shouted, finally losing his patience. "We should have treated her well regardless of who she was. We should have shown her respect because she was a person, because she was my wife, because treating people with dignity is the right thing to do." He took a breath, trying to calm down. "We treated her terribly because we thought she was nobody. That says everything about us and nothing about her. Don't you see? We're not the victims here. We're the villains in this story, and we deserve everything that's happened to us." Patience was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, "You're right. God help me, you're right. We were terrible to her." "Yes, we were," Derek agreed. "And now we get to live with that for the rest of our lives." After hanging up, Derek did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed. Not for his business back. Not for Adiz to forgive him and return. Not for his old life. He prayed for wisdom to learn from his mistakes. He prayed for the strength to become a better person. And he prayed that somehow, someday, he might get a chance to genuinely apologize to Adiz. Not to ask for anything, not to beg for anything back, but simply to tell her he understood how wrong he had been. 1 year after the divorce, Derek was at a coffee shop near his apartment. It was a Saturday morning, and he was reading the newspaper, a habit he'd developed in his new, quieter life. The bell above the door chimed, and Derek looked up automatically. His heart stopped. Adiz walked in, accompanied by a tall, well-dressed man. They were laughing about something, comfortable with each other in a way that spoke of genuine connection and ease. Adiz looked incredible. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, still her style, still comfortable rather than flashy, but she carried herself with a confidence that had been missing during their marriage. She looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy. Derek knew he should look away, should let her enjoy her coffee in peace. But he couldn't help staring. Adiz noticed him. For a moment, their eyes met across the coffee shop. Derek stood up, uncertain. Should he approach? Should he leave? Should he? Adiz made the decision for him. She said something to the man she was with, then walked over to Derek's table. The man followed, standing slightly behind her in a protective but not possessive stance. "Derek," Adiz said, her voice neutral but not hostile. "Adiz," Derek responded, his voice cracking embarrassingly. You look wonderful. You look happy." "I am," she said simply. No elaboration, no false modesty. Just a statement of fact. She gestured to the man beside her. "This is Chukwudi Okafor. He teaches African literature at the University of Lagos. Chukwudi, this is Derek, my ex-husband." Chukwudi extended his hand. Derek shook it, feeling completely inadequate next to this man who clearly had Adiz's heart in ways Derek never had. "It's good to meet you," Chukwudi said politely. An awkward silence fell. Derek searched for words. "I've been seeing your work in the news," he finally said to Adiz. "The Dignity Initiative. It's incredible. You're helping so many people." "Thank you," Adiz replied. "It's important work." Another silence. Derek knew he might never get another chance like this. "Adiz, I need to say something. No expectations, no agenda, just, I need you to hear this." She waited, her expression carefully neutral. "I'm sorry," Derek said, and his voice broke. "I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry for everything. For not valuing you. For letting my family treat you terribly. For caring more about appearances than about your feelings. For being too blind and stupid to see what I had until it was gone." Tears were streaming down his face now, but he didn't care. "You loved me. You supported me and my entire family while we treated you like garbage. And I repaid you by humiliating you in the cruelest way possible." He wiped his eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I lost. Not the money, I mean yes, the money would have been nice, but I lost you. I lost a woman who was loyal and kind and generous. I lost someone who loved me enough to hide her success so I wouldn't feel threatened." Adiz listened quietly, her expression giving away nothing. "I've learned from this," Derek continued. "I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to understand that people's worth isn't measured by what they look like or what they have. I'm trying to treat everyone with respect and dignity. I'm trying to become the kind of person who deserved you, even though I know it's too late." He took a shaky breath. "That's all. I just needed you to know that I finally understand. And I'm sorry. From the bottom of my broken heart, I'm sorry." Adiz was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. "I appreciate your apology, Derek. Truly. And I believe you when you say you've learned from this. Growth is always possible, and I'm glad you're choosing to grow." She paused. "But you need to understand something. Forgiveness isn't about you. It's about me choosing not to carry the weight of your mistakes. I've forgiven you because I refuse to let what you did define my future or poison my present. But that doesn't mean I'm giving you another chance," she continued, and Derek nodded. He had known this, but hearing it still hurt. "Not because I'm cruel, but because I respect myself too much to return to a situation that required me to diminish my light so you could feel brighter." She glanced at Chukwudi, and the look they shared was full of warmth and mutual respect. "I'm with someone now who celebrates my success. Who thinks my generosity is beautiful, not exploitable. Who respects my choices, including my choice to live simply. That's what I should have had from the beginning. That's what I deserve." Derek nodded, more tears falling. "I know. You do deserve that. I'm genuinely glad you found it." Chukwudi spoke for the first time since the handshake. "Derek, can I say something?" Derek nodded. I want you to know that Adiz is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met, Chakotay said. Not because of her wealth or her success, though those are impressive, but because of her character, her kindness, her wisdom, the way she sees the best in people even when they don't deserve it. He continued, she's told me about your marriage. And I want you to know that I don't hate you. I actually feel sorry for you. Because you had something precious and didn't recognize it. That's a tragedy, not because you lost wealth, but because you lost someone who genuinely loved you. Derek could barely speak through his tears. I know. Believe me, I know. Adiz touched Derek's shoulder briefly, not with affection, but with the kind of compassion you'd show any person who's suffering. I hope you're doing okay. Truly. I don't wish you harm. I hope you find happiness and learn to value it properly when you do. Thank you, Derek whispered. I hope you have a beautiful life. You deserve every good thing. Adiz smiled sadly. I know I do. That's the difference between now and then. I used to hope you'd see my value. Now I know my value, and I don't need anyone's validation. She started to turn away, then paused. Oh, and Derek. I paid your mother's medical bills again last month. She had another surgery. I know she doesn't have insurance anymore. Derek's eyes widened. You? What? Why would you do that after everything? Because that's who I am, Adiz said simply. I help people, even when they've hurt me. I just don't do it at the expense of my own dignity anymore. She and Chakotay walked to the counter to order their coffee, leaving Derek standing there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he'd lost and the grace of the woman he'd thrown away. As Derek watched them leave the coffee shop, laughing together, clearly in love, he understood something profound. Adiz hadn't just survived what he'd done to her. She had thrived. She had taken her pain and transformed it into purpose, helping thousands of other women find their worth. She had found genuine love with someone who valued her properly. She had won. Not by destroying him, though she easily could have, but by choosing herself, by building a better life, by refusing to let his cruelty define her. And Derek had to live with the knowledge that he'd had everything. Real love, genuine partnership, a woman worth more than gold, and he'd traded it all for his mother's approval and his own ego. The punishment wasn't losing the money. The punishment was knowing what he'd lost and having to watch her flourish without him. So what do we learn from Adiz's story? First, that your worth is not determined by how others treat you. Adiz was a billionaire whether Derek's family acknowledged it or not. She was valuable whether they respected her or not. Their blindness to her worth said everything about them and nothing about her. You are valuable right now, exactly as you are. Your worth doesn't increase because someone finally notices it. It was always there. The question is whether you recognize it yourself. Second, that kindness is not weakness. Adiz helped Derek's family for years. That was genuine kindness. But when they crossed the line, she had no problem walking away. Being generous doesn't mean being a doormat. Setting boundaries is not cruel, it's necessary. It's essential. It's how you protect yourself while still being a good person. Third, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply let people face the consequences of their own actions. Adiz didn't seek elaborate revenge. She didn't try to destroy Derek's family through manipulation or schemes. She simply stopped protecting them from the results of their own poor decisions. She withdrew her support and let natural consequences take their course. And finally, that it's never too late to choose yourself. Adiz spent 7 years trying to make a marriage work with people who didn't value her. 7 years of shrinking herself, hiding her light, hoping that if she just loved them enough, they would love her back properly. But when she finally walked away, when she finally chose her own dignity over their approval, she didn't just survive, she thrived. She built something meaningful from her pain. She helped thousands of other women. She found genuine love with someone who saw her value from day one. Your story doesn't end when someone fails to appreciate you. It doesn't end when a relationship falls apart. It doesn't end when you have to walk away from people you love because they refuse to treat you well. Your story continues. And sometimes the best chapters are written after you close the door on people who couldn't see your worth. Now I want to hear from you. What's your take on this story? Do you think Adiz did the right thing by withdrawing her financial support? Should she have given Derek's family a warning first? Or do you think they got exactly what they deserved? And here's the deeper question. Have you ever been in Adiz's position? Have you ever helped people who took your generosity for granted? Have you ever been made to feel small by people who should have been celebrating you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share your stories. Let's have a real conversation about self-worth, boundaries, and the courage it takes to walk away from people who don't value you. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. And if you want to hear more stories about people who chose dignity over dysfunction, who chose themselves over toxic relationships, who found the courage to walk away and build better lives, subscribe to this channel. Here's what I want you to remember as you go about your day. The people who mock your simplicity often can't afford your complexity. The ones who laugh at your choices rarely understand your reasons. And the family or friends or partners who can't see your worth don't deserve your presence. Adiz signed those divorce papers in tears, surrounded by people who thought they'd won. But she walked away with her dignity intact, her future bright, and her purpose clear. She proved that sometimes the best response to being underestimated is simply becoming the best version of yourself and letting others watch from the sidelines. What would you have done in her position? Let me know in the comments. I'm reading every single one. And if this story helped you see something in your own life differently, if it gave you courage to set a boundary or walk away from a toxic situation or recognize your own worth, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes a story like Adiz is exactly what someone needs to find the strength to choose themselves. Check out our next video where we explore another incredible story of transformation and justice. And remember, you don't need anyone's permission to know your value. You just need the courage to walk away from anyone who refuses to see it. Until next time, remember, never dim your light to make someone else comfortable. The right people will celebrate your shine. The wrong people will complain about it. And your job is to shine anyway.